Okay,
The
let's
story.
get cracking. So, let me see. Well, let's have a unique countdown. I don't know.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5,
The children are coming.
3, 2, 1.
Boom. Okay. All right. Thanks very much, guys. Welcome to this week on Sci-Fi on Ice, and we are discussing book number 28. I think it's called When It Changed by Joanna Russ.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a story about, like, I don't want to say a dystopian future, but it's a story about a future where after an event has happened, and so we find out about this new normal where it's all women. There's been an event. I guess all the men have died off, and basically the story revolves around the men come back and how that challenges what is normal, and there's a interesting question posed at the end about, I guess, what is normal and change. I think that's like is that a plot summary of the story, do you reckon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
I didn't read it today, but I read it yesterday, so I'm gonna go first on my impression, and then you guys fill me in on the gaps that I missed. So for me, I'm a bit mixed about it. There's some parts that I found quite interesting, and then there are some parts I found a bit lacking. I reckon the story structure was quite good. Like it sets up the world. You know where you are and what to expect of this new normal, which I think is a difficult thing as a reader to, because the idea of setting up this new world is that this is what is normal, and it's difficult for me to go like, oh no, but this is what's normal in my world, and so that was challenging, but I kind of got it, and for me the most interesting bit was when the stakes were raised, when our main protagonist, which I think is the narrator in the story, she's confronted. She's with the reality is like, whoa, things are going to change. And I really liked that part of the story. I felt like the ending sort of was a bit of it wasn't a letdown, but it just sort of fell off a bit. And I was like, oh, maybe it could have been a bit better. And one thing I did quite like was our protagonist was, even though she was living in this new normal world, she was different than all the others, because she was, as I guess maybe we'll discuss later, she's a bit more special than the others. So I did quite like that part of what was at stake. So yeah, I'm a bit mixed about it. How about you guys?
Dean, do you want to go?
Yeah. I started reading it, and then I switched to the text to speech, like the computer reading it back to me, while I was doing some other stuff. And when they started talking about these alien beings, and then they were speaking Russian, I was like, what? Like, am I? I had to go back to it, and I actually had to read it myself, because I thought the audio was doing something weird. And then I got to the point where it said it's the same species, and I'm like, oh, okay, they're not aliens. But yeah, I disagree with Stephen. I didn't quite get the world building. I did like that they introduced you to everybody, and then they went into obviously there's the interaction between everybody, but it took me a while to figure out what they were actually talking about. Only when they got to the I think it's called parthenogenesis. Only when they got to that part did I pick up that they're basically there to do their thing or try and initiate the old ways. But yeah, it was a very interesting take on that old thing of men are from Venus and women are from Mars. And what if women were really on their own planet? Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, I agree. It took me a while to realize what was the actual setup. And yeah, it was like that when they said the matronomic, they take that, and then the parthenogenesis, yeah, how they breed, basically. That's when it's kind of like, oh, okay, there's no men. Um, and that's why this, and so kind of glancing at it again, because I read it a while ago. And when they say like he and his and why it was italicized, and I'm like, oh, okay, I get your point now, because the concept of men and the masculine male became so foreign. It was like a mythical creature. And I like that, yeah, their daughter is kind of enamored because it's like, oh, they're so exotic, they're so new, and she's kind of disappointed as well. And it's kind of like, meeting a celebrity or something that you've heard lots about, and finally meeting them in person. And yeah, it was until the end where you kind of get the significance of it, in that this is a world of women. And I agree with Dean, like there wasn't really enough world building at the beginning, because you had to fill in a lot of the gaps, I think, like mentally, at least for me, picturing things, picturing them. Like, I've just got a car going down a dusty road into the country. I don't know if like there's other things. I don't know what else is there, and there's I guess not as much context as I would like. Um, but yeah, it's an interesting thought experience, because they say like, yeah, what if there were no men? And I think they excuse the fact that they were able to continue breeding and generating new generations, because the little offhand comment of they were selected for their intelligence, and so they were able to compensate the plague. And you're kind of like, oh, okay, that kind of adds up. That I can see how those dots connect. But also, I think reading it as a woman, and the arrogance of the Russians, kind of like, well, we're here now, all is well. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, no, that sounds familiar. But I think I kind of, there were two stories, and I chose this one because, yeah, I kind of wanted to get a different perspective, because I know what I think people will assume what I see in it, and I know obviously I've got a different perspective, because living in a place where there's only women is so much safer and comforting, because when you add a masculine energy to that, it becomes more threatening, um, until you know whether it is or not. It's the unknown factor, I mean. So it's kind of like, oh, okay, I can get behind a totally female planet, um, to a degree. So, but I'm like, I still don't know if I would want that. But yeah.
Is masculine a relative term, do you think?
Yeah, and I think they were relying on the prior knowledge of, the fact that we are reading it, and we are humans, and we are living in a co-ed world. So it's those kind of assumptions, and playing into, because yeah, when was it written? I can't remember.
72.
Okay, yeah, so it's still, hello baby.
Yeah, it's just
um
talking.
and yeah, it's like there's still lots of stereotypes in terms of gender roles, but you can kind of you can see how it's breaking down, because in the 70s, you've just gone through the 60s and the free love era. You can see how, like, the thought processes of the author are also breaking down, and kind of like, yeah, what if?
Well, for me, the where it gets really interesting is that they're in the room, and they realize that the world is about to change, and I think this story lets me. Sorry, I've got some kids. Maybe I'll hold that thought for a moment. Let me mute myself.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting the generalizations that she chose to use. Like out of all the male stereotypes she chose to introduce after what is it? I think 600 years of no men.
1 second, Dean. I can't hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, Stephen. He may have taken his headphones off.
Yeah, I can't even mute him.
Yeah. Okay, Dean.
Yeah,
Sit.
so her having been written in the 70s, her choice of stereotypes was quite interesting. That out of all the different kind of ethnic generalizations, she went for these Neanderthal-like Russian men.
Mm.
And if you had to choose any kind of type of male to not represent him, it would be Russians.
Yeah, they're not going to do the most like kindly, gentlemanly.
Yeah, like that's not our
Okay.
best foot forward, guys.
Yeah, let's send the French, maybe. Maybe the
And
Italian.
yeah, and then like the room they chose to meet the woman in was the kitchen.
Was it? Oh, because that's
Like,
what I may have missed it. But
yeah,
yeah, that's a good point.
before they go outside, like they meet the woman in the kitchen, and I'm like, wow, that's nail on the head.
Mm.
Yeah, so that made me chuckle a little bit.
Yeah. See, in my head, I just had this big like community hall in my head because, like I say, I did only read it the once and then glanced at it just before we spoke, or we are speaking, and I glanced at it and to kind of remind myself, and yeah, I think I would have liked more description about everything else, like the almost the stuff that doesn't necessarily matter, because it relied so much on the relationship and the interplay between these two groups of, like, the planet dwellers and these Russians, and the change, yeah, the knowledge that this now brings and the impact it makes. It relied too much on the people in a way. I would have liked to have a bit more context.
Yeah.
It
Also,
really
their
goes
their
into,
choice
oh
of
yeah,
names, like
Japanese names.
yeah, all the different characters' names. Like there's a Yuki, Phyllis, Helgeson. Um,
It's all over, yeah.
yeah, like there's no, I don't know, no
But
cohesive.
then that plays into the idea that they were selected from, like, Earth, excuse me, as it was.
Yeah,
And they just selected these people for their intelligence and sent them up. And then, yeah, this catastrophe happened and all the men died. Um, but all these women, because they were also intelligent, were able to overcome it. Uh, but yeah,
Mm.
you'd think that. So we're going forward to a future where they can, what's it, colonize another planet or more, because the implication that they were chosen for their intelligence, did they say, or is it just me that there were other planets for different reasons, like people were
And they were
chosen?
called the continents, and then they were living in like the more rural continent
Oh,
with
okay.
one city. So they had one city, and they were saying, oh, in 70 years we'll have more than one major city.
Okay, no, but I assumed the whole planet was just them.
Colonies, maybe. I
And
think different colonies. They were one, like the farming colony, I think.
yeah, but I got the gist that it was a planet that they were a colony on, like a small planet, like a moon. Um, and then there were other planets, because otherwise, if they were on the same planet, why couldn't, like, why is it such a big thing that these Russians have arrived and it's been 600 years that it's taken to happen? So that's why I think they must have been distant for it to be such a big thing and for it to be so long.
Yeah, because
That's
the
why
Russians arrived. They arrived like on a spaceship, right? They
mm,
come down, yeah,
from the sky.
in their
Yeah.
silvery clothes. Yeah.
But then, so we're going to, like, say, like, now, so it's written in the 70s. She's imagining a time in the future where they can colonize moons or planets or whatever.
Mm.
to then 600 years beyond that, to meaning to be like, hey guys, we've saved you, we can have sex again.
Yeah.
And like, so it's so far in the future, which my reason for this long-winded thing is that you'd think that the gender roles will have broken down to a point where there aren't these stereotypes needed, as Dane was saying, with these, brusque, arrogant Russians, that say it's 1500 years from now or whatever. It's already broken down, even in the author's lifetime, from the 50s to the 70s, because I'm going to assume she was at least in her 20s when she wrote this, that she's already seen it breaking down. You would assume that it's progressed as it has. And so you'd assume that it would keep on progressing, but it's kind of like she's wanting to make a point of, look, gender roles, look, oh, so bad.
Well, it's not like the woman like eliminated the men. That the men died from something, just some other tragedy. They didn't choose to rid them of men, but and so the idea of men coming back almost doesn't seem like a negative. But although they do seem to look back at the negatives, like, oh, because the guy says his first response is, we have gender equality now, and like that did seem a bit what do you call it, in storytelling, it was a bit of a Judd, like a,
Yeah.
well, why does you have to mention that? Like like it's kind of revealing your motives here, and
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, and I think, yeah, it connects with like the use of the different cliches, like Dane was saying. I think the author's purpose was too in your face.
Mm.
Like it was so, like, yeah, so obvious that
Yeah,
it's trying to say, like, look, women living together can function even better. You're like, well, no, we can't. Still, you still need both genders. There's a reason why boys keep getting born, and they still exist.
so yeah, but I still feel like the tension in the room was like really the best part of the story, and yeah, I agree with you that the introduction to the world building was boring. I mean, I get it. Like I was reading, going, okay, yep, there are these people in the car, and they're describing their personalities. Yep, okay, like, and I mean, like the duel thing was interesting. She'd fought. So we're told things like she's willing to kill people, and her partner was willing to kill at Hunt, and maybe breaking stereotypes in that way. And I was like, okay, so this is what they're capable of, our characters, right?
So the
And
ladies were dueling amongst themselves
well,
for
Mm.
this is the relative masculine thing, right? Because even though there are no men, but some women are gonna scale, not scale. Some women are going to show more masculine features than other women, right? And so they're going to
Yeah,
ca-
play different roles,
yeah,
different functions.
be the hunter out, because you still need a hunter for food, or if there's no rice growing, you probably need someone to go kill some pigs or something.
Yeah, no, when I turned like the masculine, it's literally like the use of the pronouns, and like they haven't had to talk his or him and like use these words, which I just thought was kind of like, oh, that helped me understand the point of what she was writing. Because she was trying to make, yeah, a very kind of this almost ideal world. You could also imagine the author was kind of like, if only one day it could be like this. And you'd be like,
What do
oh,
you think?
these horrible men arrived, and it was all sad. Because as you say, it's not a bad thing that these Russians turned up and they're saying like, hey, look, we're going to help you out, you know?
What do you
Because
think about the way she described their names? She first tells them, "Oh, our names are patronymic or patronymic or whatever," and but then she stops and she realizes, because actually women have taken over the men's role, and she goes, "Actually, for you would think of them as matronymic," and so I thought that was quite interesting, because it almost, you sort of see how it didn't really matter which word, because it had the same utility. it was just you took the name after that, but that
Yeah, I think it's because, well, she said they had 3 kids between the two of them, her and her partner. One
mm,
was hers, two were the no, one was her partner's, 2 were hers. So they have to have this division of they take the matronomic or the patronomic, um, and I think maybe it lost its gender division and it was more just kind of one or the other, because I assume after finishing reading it, the fact that it's hers is because she gave birth, I'm assuming, and the other lady gave birth to that one because they're both women. But again,
mm.
I don't know. I'm a little
Yeah,
confused.
I saw it as well. All right, I gotta do.
I suppose when a story is, but I mean, when it is a short story, as an author, it's impossible for you to cover all your bases. Um,
Mm.
so in this format, she probably thought she focused on what was important, which was that interaction.
Yeah, true. Yeah. But
So
because I'm
no,
just
yeah,
trying to understand, like Stephen's question of matra or patronomic.
yeah,
Uh,
because I suppose it would depend if all the people in that on that planet, if they all were, um, if they all procreated via parthenogenesis, which is basically just you know you become pregnant. So if they all did that, then yeah, it would just be
the matronomic, it would just be, yeah, it'd be the
yeah.
mother. So
I interpreted it as like they just had taken over the um the patron side of things, and if is it just reduced to roles, and so it will now they are doing that role. If there's still need 2 people to do the oh no, you don't need two. Is it like what is it like meiosis or something? Dean, are you the biologist?
It's basically like
it's
when
asexual reproduction, isn't it?
yeah, it's asexual. So there's no male gametes at all. It's just
So they're not parents; they're like couples with their own children, with their own individual children.
Yeah, so
yeah. So
that's
the
what I mean. I understood it. Like one was the other lady's because she physically birthed that child, and
Okay,
that's the differentiation between the 3 kids. Is basically who came out of whom.
what? Well, I guess what I found interesting from that was the the idea that like fine, they were a couple, they were lovers, and they had their own individual children. But at the end, the men sort of, I guess, the story resides on this question of like, oh well, what you do is not natural, and I don't think it was convincing the way that the men laid it out, because it was a bit of a caveman argument. It was like a just because sort of thing. But yeah, I felt like the story really was trying to tackle this. You guys carry on for a second.
Yeah, I think, like, as I say, women's communes, like groups, they they are more attractive to women, just like I assume men only groups, where you can all be men, more attractive to men because you're all on the same kind of playing ground. You all kind of have the same expectations and understanding. Um, but I feel like, yeah, the stance the author took of making the men like a negative influence kind of ruined the story because then it had an objective and it had like an underlying purpose.
yeah, because the uh, according to what she says in the book, in the story, the sole reason those men were there was basically for sex,
Yeah,
because the
procreation.
woman could procreate on their own. The men had technology which
Wait,
allowed them to procreate.
no, Okay, remember there's the dummy guy, and then there's this, which is dumb by the way. There was which was really dumb. There's the dummy guy on the inside, and there was the smart guy on the porch. Or I know he's the one, and she goes, "Oh no, you're the real one." Anyway, he makes the argument that their genes were dumb, and they wanted their genes to bring up their IQ and improve their gene pool. He doesn't say IQ. He says improve their genes because their genes weren't it might have something to do with IQ. That was my interpretation of it. But yeah, he was like, we want your genes, and then she's like, no, go get your own genes. And it was a bit, it fell a bit flat at that point, but it was sort of right. Wasn't that what they were after? But maybe also he was saying that he wanted the natural. Yeah, but we want to do it the natural way, and so it was. Yeah, I kind of felt like the question was interesting, but then it didn't really the tension. Although I did like the shotgun, the Chekhov's gun. It did get shot into the deck, um, and I believed it because at the beginning, she her friend the hunter, she would never kill someone, but she was able to kill an animal. But she felt really she felt like her the life that she knew was at stake, and so she saw these men like animals, and she was happy to kill them, and I believed it as a reader, and so I reckon that bit worked really well. Although I was definitely disappointed with the end, but that was the highlight of the story for me was that moment of tension.
Yeah. No, I think yeah, the relationships were were important, and it was just back and forth. But yeah, I think I don't know. For me, just like to summarize, I guess I would have liked a bit more in context, a bit more information about the world, if indeed it was a moon, a planet, a continent, whatever. A bit more information, and also yeah, her objective, a little less in your face.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, what do you think of at the end she makes the quote of Goethe's play Faust, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, this is something I know a little bit about, and I was thinking that kind of I would have liked that at the beginning of the story because the Faustian mythos in the Western canon is like the sort of the Western I guess what would you call it, the arc, the the arc of the Western civilization, as well as he predicts the decline of it, right? And so what she's saying is, you got to enjoy what you've got before, like whatever you have goes away. Um, I forget what the German line that she had in it, but it's something to do with like, this is beautiful, basically now, like so enjoy what you got now. I think,
mm,
which I thought is annoying if you didn't, because I know a little bit of German that if you don't know German, that you kind of go, oh, but what? And so it's a little bit esoteric, right? And I reckon there's no point leading your readers to kind of guess or go find another book to read to work that out, especially for a short story. But yeah, I don't know.
yeah, no, I agree. I don't remember as much of it as I thought I did, though.
What did you? I was, and the very last line was a bit cheesy as well,
Oh
right?
yeah.
It's something like something. It's a play on words with the name of the place that they're at, and it's like, okay, this is the world that you've built is to represent this idea that you've got, and okay, it's okay, but that's all it is, right? For me, it's just it's okay. Um, I would have liked more from it, which like a very interesting question. Because like I don't know, potentially there could be I don't know, who knows? Maybe all the XY chromosomes just don't work anymore, right? And we all just die out for some reason. And civilization, well, it's gonna carry on because it does what it does, right?
Mm.
Maybe, but
Well,
yeah,
shall we move on to the scores?
we
Because
can.
I don't think there's anything else. Or Dean, is there anything else you want to comment?
No, I think we've covered everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a particularly deep story, is it?
No, but it's. I mean, for something written, shy of 50 years ago, to still be able to talk about it today. I mean, it's not half bad. I mean, obviously we would have liked more, but what do you get? You get what you get for 5 pages. Not too shabby.
True. All right. Who's going first then?
I shall go first. Are you ready? Do you need
No,
to?
go. You just tell us.
So, for Joanna Russ's story, I'm gonna give it a out of 500. I'm gonna give it a 275.
I'll go next, if that's all right, because I spoke to my gut, and my gut says 301.
Right.
No real thought, just going, that feels right.
Is it written somewhere on your jumper at the moment?
No, it's my gut, inside. Look
okay.
inside, Dean. Look within.
Oh, inside.
All right. This story had all the parts of a story. I thought the storytelling wasn't interesting. I thought the question was interesting, which was the only redeeming part of it for me. I give it 213.
All right. Do you need trumpets?
We do. So, all right. Yes. Score average time. The best part, right? Or the second best part. We read When It Changed by Joanna Russ. Your score average is 263. Woo!
Okay,
Alright.
yeah, that's still pretty good.
Not too bad. We've had
Probably.
worse.
We've had a lot worse.
Yeah, I think you're right. The redeeming quality is the thought experiment and the kind of the thinking beyond it, not necessarily the story itself. But that happens every week, isn't it? This discussion is usually more interesting than the story.
Yeah. I think that's just because we are interesting.
Yes, that's it. You're right.
I think so.
Well, yeah. It's good. It's good practice that we sort of. It's one thing to interpret a story your way, but to hear other people's story. That's why we do this, right? I quite like it, and it's revealing as well. So 263, it's 1 point ahead of By His Bootstraps, which was 262.
Oh.
Better than that's the guy who did the Bug movie. Heinlein, Robert Heinlein, is it? Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say Himmler, but
I don't think it was him.
I don't know where he would be on this if Himmler wrote a story,
That would be very interesting sci-fi.
The next score above that is 289, which is New Rose Hotel, which I don't know. I didn't really like that story. That score might be too high for that one.
I don't remember it really.
Not a clue.
Like that robot girl that
yes.
She was ready for me. All that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was very sci-fi though, but
it was.
Yeah. It's a long way off our best, which is our best is Burning Chrome. There's nothing better than Burning Chrome.
Nah, that is the gold standard.
The smell of burning chrome in the morning just makes you feel wonderful.
Yes. Well, for our next one, I'm taking us back to the deepest, darkest Africa.
Nice.
Yeah. And we've got some bugs. We've got some AI. Got some.
Is it anything to do with District 9?
No.
Ah, that would have been cool.
So the story is called Spider the Artist,
Mm.
and it's by Nigerian author Nnedi Okafor.
Oh, I've heard of him. Ah, what's he done that? Don't tell me it's this one. But
I've sent you guys the link to it.
sweet. I look forward to it.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So, see you guys next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, next week.
Who knows where the world will be?
Yeah, no, I'll message. It's all right.
Yeah, we'll sort out a time.
Yeah. All right. Bye.
Bye bye.